Hello, friends. Welcome to this free Excel crash course, your shortcut to mastering one of the most powerful tools in the world of work and productivity. Whether you are a beginner or just looking to sharpen your skills, this 1 hour free course has got you covered. We'll start with the basics like sum, averages, min, max, and then dive into cell referencing, named ranges, and even array formulas. Plus, we'll explore how to create stunning charts that make your data pop. By the end of this, you'll be working smarter, not harder. So, if you're ready to level up your Excel game, hit that like button and let's get started.
In this module, we are going to learn about some basic Excel functions like sum, average, max, min, count, and count A. Now, sum returns the sum of the arguments. Average returns the average or the arithmetic mean of the argument. Max returns the largest number in a set of values which we need to pass as an argument. Minimum returns the smallest number in a set of values as we pass in the argument. Count returns the count of number in a set of values. So count will only count the number. So if anything other than number, count is unable to count. However, if you want to count numbers as well as other items like names and special characters and all those stuffs, then you have to use count A. So let's see how this works and how we are able to add, find average, find the max, min, count, and count A in Excel. So we'll go to the sum sheet here, the sheet which has the name sum. And if you look into the sheet, you'll find that it has an invoice. Now, it's a very small one though, but here we are going to find out the total of the invoice. So we have each items here uniquely identified by this item ID, item name, the rate per unit, units sold, and the total. Now the total is nothing but the product of your rate per unit into unit, and that is for all. And your purpose here is to find out the sum of the invoice. So to find the sum of the invoice, we have multiple ways of doing it in Excel. Now one of the ways, the shortcut ways or the easiest way is to go to the Home tab in the ribbon, and there is something called as the auto sum. So we select the cell where you want to display the summation, and then we will click on the auto sum. So the moment I click on the auto sum, you'll see that a function is generated automatically or added or inserted into the cell with an equal to sign. All functions in a cell, if you're writing a function in a cell, it should start with an equal to sign. So all functions or formulas should start with equal. Then the name of the function, then a starting parenthesis, and the cells which you want to select in that argument, and then close the parenthesis. So here this function sum is going to sum up the values of these numbers in the range E7 to E11. After the parenthesis, we can just select enter, and here it is, your invoice total. So that is one way of doing that. The other way is that you can type it yourself. For example, you can just say equal to, and then say S, and then U, and then M, and the sum comes. And you can press on tab, so it goes at the top, and then you have the starting parenthesis, so you don't need to do anything. You just need to select the cell, close the parenthesis, and say enter. Same thing, but this time I'm not using the service of this function or this button, but rather I'm typing it on my own. So these are the two ways in which you can do it faster. So if you already know the function, you can type it directly. How do we then find the average of this invoice? We'll go to this sheet, which is having the name average. Select the cell where I want to show the average. Same invoice. Here I want to find the average of this total. So you just need to go here, click on the average, and it now has the average functions with the parentheses, and it already selects the data for you. You just need to press enter. Very simple, very easy. Similarly, you can type on your own as well. You can backspace, say equal to average, and then you can use the down arrow to select your average and press tab, and that average function will go and get inserted into the cell. Then what you can do is you can select the cells which you want that an average to be done. Close the parenthesis and say enter. So this way your average is done. Then we can similarly also do the max. Now here in this invoice, we want to find out the costliest item in our invoice. Now to find out the costliest item in our invoice, we will find the maximum rate per unit. So I have to do what? Similarly, I have to select to the cell where I want to display that highest or the costliest item, and then I click on the sum, and here we have the max function. I'll select that max function, and automatically it gets selected with the max function. Name of the function is max, and the cells which needs to be selected, and enter will give me the costliest item in my invoice, which is toothbrush, whose rate is $12.90 per item or per toothbrush. Okay, of course we can also do this. We can go here and is equal to max, tab, select these cells, close my parenthesis and say enter. Let me teach you another way of inserting functions. So this was one way, we click here, and another way was we type. There's another way called insert. In the insert, in the formula tab. We have in the formula tab, we have the insert function. So also here we have the auto sum. We have functions categorized by, have broken down or divided by category. And we can also find this in the insert function. So when you click on the insert function, you will get that insert function palette. Okay, from there you can pick up any one of your choice. Like for example, in all you'll find all the functions. In financials, you'll find all the functions related to financials. Similarly for date and time, math, statistical. So in the statistical, you will find, max and min function. So from here also I can select max. So I can go here the first and I can press M. I'll get to all the M. And then here I will select max and say OK. And then it gives me this function argument palette. So I don't need to type anything in the cell. I have this palette where I need to put everything. So here I'll just delete and again do the selection of fresh. Okay, and then say OK. So I'll get the same thing. So this is another way of doing it by using the function palette. Min function, very simple. You have to go to the home tab, or you can click here. In the formulas, you again have the auto sum and you have the min. And you get the min function here, C7 to C11, press enter, and you get the one with the cheapest rate per unit, which is nothing but 2.99, and that is my shampoo. Okay, now we get to count functions. Now as I was telling you, that count function counts the numbers. So here if you look in the total, these are all numbers. And therefore, this cells, if I use count to count this, I'll be able to count it, right? So I'll use equal to count, or what I can do here is I can select this cell and again use the auto sum. And if I don't find it, okay, I find count numbers here. So count numbers. So count numbers are nothing but count function, right? And then it selects all the cells and say enter. So it tells me 5. So the number of items in this invoice is 5. Of course, you can count it as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But since it's a small invoice, please remember that if you have a huge set of data, manually counting would be a cumbersome job. Hence, we use this function. Okay. Let's just go to the next function, which is count A. Now, what is the difference? Now, for example, if I try to find out or count my number of items in the invoice by using the count function on this column. that is item name, then what will be the output? Let us see. If I say is equal to, or you can say click and then say auto sum, more functions, because this count is not there, and again opens this. I go to all and say, and here is say count, and look for count. So it's the count A, right? So again, I'll use count first, just show you the difference. So I'll use count and say OK. And then I'll select this cell here. Now what should be the output? Because count basically counts the numbers, but these are not numbers. These are names. Let's see. Okay, 0. It's unable to count it, because using count, you can only count numbers. So what you should do? You can use count A. So you can actually go and simply add count A here, right? And say enter, and you will get 5. Which means that count A is able to count the strings or names. Can count also count numbers? Let's see here. If I use count A here, if I use count A and then count this, let me see what happens. It says $5. Of course, it's not should be $5 because it takes the formatting from the top. So right click, go to the format cell and make it general. So it's 5. So 5. So it seems that count A does both. It counts the numbers as well as name, right? So here that's the difference between count and count A. So remember that if you want to just count the numbers and you want to ignore texts, then of course please use count function and not count A, because count A is going to count both numbers as well as text. Okay, so these are the functions we have covered in this module. Now, having understood the idea of or the concept of cell referencing, we now just look at a very small example here. So if you look at this table, you will find that there is a gross, which is nothing but the rate into quantity. Now, I want to give a 10% rebate on the gross, and I want to give it for all the items. So how would we go about? Now, basically, we need to pick up that 10% from here and not type it manually. So we'll say no problem. I'll say is equal to gross and then multiply it by the 10% here. So I'll refer for my 10% to this cell, which is E12. And my gross value is in D30. So here I am doing what is called as relative referencing, because there is no dollar here. So now I say enter, and you can see 120. So then what we need to do? We just need to copy this to these cells. Oh God, what is this? This is showing me some weird value. Now this is because of the fact that we have used relative referencing here. Now when we drag this, it says D14 into 120. So D14 into 120 is that value. And then we come here, this into this. Why? Because as we are dragging, the formula changes. And therefore, it refers here. It should have referred here all the time. So if I want to make it refer here all the time, what should I do? I should do absolute referencing for this cell. So how would we do absolute referencing for this cell? Very simple. You'll go here and you want this cell, which is referred to by E12. This is E12. I want that to be fixed. So I'll use function F4, and that I made absolute. And then when I say enter, it says 120, which is the 10% of 1200. Then I drag it down, or I copy it, and I get the correct result, which is nothing but 400 to 200. So here, if you look, it is always referring to $E12. $12. However, the one which is having relative reference, it is changing as we are trying. Right? Or you could have done the same thing here. Okay. So what you would have done here, in case of 15%, you would have said equal to, and then what? And then this into this. Select this and say function F4 or simply F4 and say enter 180 and drag. So I am getting the correct answers. I am getting as per my requirement. But now suppose I don't want to write two formulas, one for 10% and one for 15%. I want one formula for all, this 6 cells, right? So how should I go about it? Let's see. So here, I need to think that in this formula, when I drag to the right, it should automatically pick up 15%, right? And when I drag it down, it should pick up the gross. So I will now allow this to happen. Okay. Now this, if I happen, now if I drag it to the right, E will become F, and then it will pick up the 15% from this column rather than this column. Now let's see if I put this dollar and then I drag, what happens. Now if I drag, so it's 12. Now it's referred to this cell, right? For its value. So as I'm dragging, it is changing this D13 to E13. And what is E13? 120. And what is 10% of 120? 12. So it should always refer to this and to this when it is here and to this 15% when it is here. So how do I do that? I come here and I say that, okay, don't change this. So don't change D to E when I'm dragging it to the right. However, change this E to F, but don't change the row when I'm dragging it down. So don't change D when I'm dragging it to the right. However, change E to F when I'm dragging it to the right. That's what it is. And this is what is mixed referencing. Now we can do a mixed referencing by using function key as well. By clicking on this and say function F4 one time, so it will be relative. Second, it is absolute. Third, it is the row which is blocked. Fourth, it is the column which is blocked. So this way you can use shortcut as well. And here what we have done, we have blocked D. And here we have blocked the row. So let's see. Yeah, perfect. So 15% of 1200 is 80. Now can I do it for all? Let's see. Yeah. So this is 15% of 4000. And so here we have to just write one formula by using cell referencing technique. And that formula works for all the 6 cells. We don't need to write two different formulas. Now look at this example. In this example, I want that I should get a rebate of 25%. So it's not mentioned anywhere. It is just this 25% which I want to give to all. Now, how do I do? Very simple. I say equal to, then this into, select this. And this should not change when I drag. So, function or simply F4, and this will be dollar. So this gives me 300, which is 25% of 1200. And then when I drag this, it always defer to that. So 25% of 400, and 4000 is 1000. So I hope this is clear, because this is a very, very important concept to learn before we go into some advanced formulas and functions, because we need to refer to cells either through relative, which most of the time you do, but there are times when we will be using absolute and mixed referencing as well. I hope this would have given you an idea about cell referencing. In this module, we are going to talk about cell referencing. Now, what is cell reference? Now, cell reference basically means whenever you are working on a worksheet, you would refer to certain cells for the value. Whenever you are creating formulas and you want certain cell value to be referred to, then you will use cell referencing. Now, what is cell referencing consisting of? There are two parts to cell referencing. Now, for example, in this cell, I want to refer to rate and quantity because the gross is basically nothing but the product of rate and quantity. Now, this is a small kind of an invoice you might think of where you have this item, you have rate and quantity, and you need to find out the gross. The gross basically means what is the product of rate and quantity. In this cell, I need to type a formula or I need to input the formula. Now, to input the formula where I can multiply these two values, I need to refer to these cells. And that process is basically called as cell referencing. So how do I refer to that cell? So first of all, whenever we write a formula in a cell, we use an equal to sign. So we will put an equal to sign and then we click on this cell. We click on this cell and then we use the multiplication sign and then click on this cell. So now you can clearly see that this formula is referencing two cells and it is multiplying their values. The referencing has two parts. One is the column which is referred to by A, B, C, D, and then the row number which is 13. So the cell references consist of two parts. One is the column name which is depicted by this letter A, B, C, D as you can see here at the top, and the row number. So here C13 and similarly here it is C13. So these two refer to this cell and this is what is called as cell referencing or cell reference. And when I click on the enter, I'll see the values. Now this value is a product of these two values. Hence, we can say that this formula refers to the cell B13 and C13 for its value. Now, having understood that, there are three types of cell referencing which you can do in Excel. The first one is relative, then it is absolute and mixed. By default, we actually use relative referencing, and this is how we actually do relative referencing by using A1. Whenever we use absolute referencing, we'll place a dollar sign in front of the row and the column. Now, what does these suggest? What does this mean? Now, relative reference. In the relative reference, whenever you in this case, when you see we have done relative reference because we haven't written any dollar sign here. So when I change the or copy the formula to the next cell below, then what happens? The formula changes. And since we have dragged it down and down increases the row, but it doesn't change the column, it changes the row. So C13 becomes B14 and C13 becomes C14. So as I am dragging this cell, it is changing the formula accordingly. This is referred to as relative reference. If I want my formula or the cell referencing not to change, like for example, I can put a dollar sign in front of B and 13. I can do that manually by going in front of this B, dollar B, and going in front of this 13 and putting a dollar sign manually. Or what I can do is I can use the shortcut of pressing F4 on your keyboard, or in your laptop, maybe some laptops you will find F4 doesn't work, so you might use function plus F4. So in my laptop also I have to use function and F4. So when I'm pressing F function and F4, you see this dollar $B, $13 is automatically done.
Here also I'll select this C. Okay, I'll leave this C13 like that, and then I'll say enter. So it says 1200. Now I drop it, drag it down. Now see, my value changes. Why? Because now it refers to B13. That doesn't change. Because of the dollar, this formula doesn't change because it's absolute, it's fixed. So when I drag, it will not change. However, C13 has now changed to C14, and that is the basic difference between your relative referencing and absolute referencing. So basic relative referencing would change as you drag, and absolute referencing will not change when you drag. In case of mixed referencing, I can have one as fixed and the other changing. So here what I've done, I have made B as fixed and this as changing. So what happens when I don't do here, I'll do in this one. So I'll go here and remove this in front of this. So in that case, what if I drag, it will automatically become B14. So let's see, when I drag this, it's 4000 because this is clearly going to be B14 into C14. So when I'm dragging it, it is becoming 14. Okay, now suppose if I go here and I remove this dollar from here and then apply it here, what happens? I'm allowing B to become C if I'm moving it towards the right. But now I'm not moving towards the right or the left, but rather I'm moving below. And therefore, when I move below, that 13 should not change to 14 because now I have blocked the row number by putting this dollar. And hence, I am getting 120 into the quantity which is 4800. So that is what is relative referencing, that is what is absolute referencing, and that is what is mixed referencing.
In this module, we are going to discuss about Name Manager. Where do we find Name Manager in our ribbon? The Name Manager is in the Formula tab or in the ribbon. And this is where we'll get the Name Manager. So this is what we are going to deal with today. Now, what is this Name Manager used for? Now, this Name Manager is basically used for storing names. Names of what? Names of a cell or a range of cell so that we can use them in our formulas. So we can name any cell or we can name a range of cell and then use it in formulas. Normally, whenever we are using our formulas, we normally refer to cells range, and that is a number. Like for example, if I want to know the total unit in the invoice, so all these items adds up to the unit. So I will do what? I'll say is equal to sum, open parenthesis, and drag this. And then close my parenthesis and say enter. Now this tells me the total number of unit in the invoice. Now if I go and look into the formula, this range is being given some numbers like D7 to D11. Now the question is whether we could give a name to this range rather in number. The answer is yes. And that is basically done using this Name Manager. There are other ways as well, the shortcut ways. So we'll learn both the shortcut ways as well as using the Name Manager. So let's start. So what we'll do is I'll just delete this formula. And then what I'll do, I want to give name to this range. And the name I want to pick up from the column header. So this range has a column header, or this range has a header on top of it, which is called as unit. And I want to refer to this range of cell as unit. So how do I do that? I can do it in multiple ways. Number one, the most easiest and common way is that I can just select this range and then go here and just go to this address bar here and then type unit and say enter. Now if you go and select this cell, you'll see D14 here. But when I select the entire range, I'll get unit. So it's no longer referred to as D17, D7 to D11. You can still refer it though, but now you can refer it with a name. So if I now go here and say is equal to sum, and then say, select this, and it comes to be unit. Well, that's good. And then I close the parenthesis and I say enter. So I get the same result. So the idea behind using the names is basically to make your formula easy, meaningful, more readable. So you know that this is sum of unit rather than D13 you do and check, okay, this is unit. So from here only you can find out that this is nothing but sum of this unit column. Similarly, if I want to do the total sum, that means I want to do the total. So I want to refer to this as total. Now I'll use another way of naming it. In this case, I went here and I wrote the name. Now I'm going to use another way. That's another way which you would learn. So I'll select this and then I'll go to create from selection. So when I click from create from selection, okay, I've done the wrong selection. So I'll just cancel this now and I will select with the title, with the header, total, and then say create from selection. And then say top row, this one is my name for this cell. So in one go, I will create the name for this cell. So I'll just select the entire range along with the title because I want to use this total as the name for this range. And I'll put top row and select top row and say OK. Now if I go and say is equal to sum, and this time I could actually go and select and I'll get a total. Or what you can do is you can also say function F3 and you will get all the names here which you have created on your worksheet, on your workbook. Now total unit we created earlier. Now we have created total. So I'll select total and say OK. Same thing, and I'll close my parentheses and I say enter. So now you get the total. Right? And the third is total item. That means the count of item, for example. So what should I do? I should also give a name. Suppose I want to give this. I want to select this. So I can go here, create from selection. Now I'll use the third way. So here I can use a define name, or I can click on the name manager and I can say new. See, in the name manager, I can see all the names I have created so far. Okay, I'll come to the details of what it is. So I can go and create a new. And then I can say, what name do I want to give? I want to give it a name code, which is this name. And what is refers to? It refers to A7 to A11. What is the scope? So the scope can be either to the workbook or to the worksheet. So if the scope is for the workbook, then this name is available to all the sheets in this workbook. If the scope is to the sheet 1, then this particular name is only available to sheet 1. Now in our case, there's only one sheet, hence this is available only to the sheet 1. But if you add another sheet, you are still able to use this code in that sheet. Why? Because the scope of this is workbook. And this refers to sheet 1, $A, $7, $A. So it refers to this range. Okay. So I create a code. Now what I do, I have done this and I'll say close. I've done it. So now I'll say is equal to count, right? A, and then starting parentheses, function F3 or simply F3 would also do, code, OK, and close parentheses and say enter. And it says they are total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. So this is how we can create names, right? And this, if you look at the name manager, you will find all the names here. From here, you can go and edit it so that you want to change the name or you want to change the refers to, and change the address and include one more row or one more column that you can do from here, right? And you can also delete it. For example, if I build this code up and I delete it and I say OK and close, you see, so it is referred to code. That means it is creating this as a value, right? So that is not the case. So now it's not considering code as an address, but rather it is considering this code to be a value and counts this as 1, right? Similarly, if I go to the name manager and I remove this unit and I say delete and I say OK and close, now it shows me a name error. And of course, I can go to the name manager here and say delete and say OK and close. Again, it shows me the error, right? Because this name doesn't exist now. In this module, we are going to learn about array formula. Now, basically what happens is that when we are actually working with our formula, normal way of working with our formula, we actually type our formula in a single cell and then we drag it wherever we want to copy it. But if you are using an array, or if you want to write a formula using an array, you can put your formula in multiple cells at one go. Now, how that will work and what are the different other techniques of working with array formula, that we'll be discussing those topics in this module. Now, before we get into that and learn the practical part, just want to go through certain points which you should know about an array formula. Now, an array formula is a type of formula that performs an operation on multiple values. So here, when we're talking about array formula, we are talking about doing things on multiple values rather than on a single value. The final result of an array formula is also in as an array, or it can be either one item or an array of items. So it can work on multiple values, can return a multiple values depending on how your formula is constructed. Now, the important point to be noted here is that whenever you enter a formula in a cell, you press enter. But in case of whenever you are entering an array formula, then you don't press enter. You normally press Control plus Shift plus enter. That is very important, and we should know that whenever we are writing an array formula, so one is a normal formula and one is an array formula. So in this module, we are learning array formula. So whenever we will put an array formula inside a cell, if I say enter, then it will work as a normal formula and it might throw error. But however, if I am using an array formula, I should give Control plus Shift plus enter. So it should be Control plus Shift plus enter. For after entering the array formula, you should press that. Now, whenever you enter the Control plus Shift plus enter, you will see that your formula has been wrapped up in a curly braces in the formula bar, which means that it is an array. So whatever you see in a curly braces, all the values in a curly braces, means that you have converted your data into an array. And that's what array formula does. So Control Shift Enter actually converts the data into an array and works on an array. Please do not enter your curly braces manually, because that will be entered by the system. If you do that manually, your formula will not work. So these are the few important points to be noted while you're working with array formula. Now the question is, what is an array? Now basically the definition is that an array is a collection of one or more items. An array in Excel appears inside a curly bracket like this, red, blue, green, and you can see a curly braces around it. Okay, it can be separated by a semicolon or it can be separated by a comma. If it is separated by a semicolon, it's a vertical array. And if it is separated by a comma, then it is a horizontal array. The reason array is so common in Excel is that they may map directly to cell ranges. So in spite of using a cell range, we can use the array directly, or we can convert a cell range into an array and then work with it. Both is possible. So by converting a cell range into an array, we get some benefits which we will discuss in this module. Vertical ranges are represented as array that use semicolons, as I told you earlier, and horizontal ranges are which one is a comma separated. And a two-dimensional range will use both semicolon and commas. So if you want to create a two-dimensional range, then you have to use both semicolon and comma. So here what I'm going to give you a demo of how to create a vertical array, how to create a horizontal array, and how to create a 2D array. So we'll just give you a small demo to understand how it works so that we can now go and work with some practical application. Now, as we have learned earlier that to create a vertical array, you have to use semicolon. So let's go to this cell, and in that cell I will say is equal to 2 semicolon 3 semicolon 4 bracket and control shift enter. Now it gives me just 2. Now why just give me 2? Why? Because I have not selected 3 cells. So since it's a vertical array, before entering the formula I should have selected 3 because I want to have 3 values which I want vertically to be printed. So I made a mistake here, so I'll select this again, right? So 1 2 3, and I'll go here and say control shift enter. See, 2 3 4 is coming. So I'll just align it. 2 3 4 is coming. So what I've done, I've written this formula. So while writing this formula, just I've taken care that I've selected all the 3 cells, written the formula, and say control shift enter. If you do just enter, it will not work. So it's say I'm sorry, you cannot change a part. And one thing, it's very important that once you have an array here, you cannot make a change. So if you say enter, it'll say you can't change a part of an array. So that is, it becomes permanent out here. So what you have to do, you have to go and delete it, right? So you can't just change anything inside an array. So that's how an array works vertically. Now horizontal array, what you need to do, you need to select these 3 and you say is equal to, and now you say 2 comma, not colon, right? 2 comma 3 comma 4 and say control shift enter. Control shift enter. See, it's now displays it or types it in a horizontal way. So if you want to type it in a horizontal way, then you need to put the separated by comma. If you want to put it in a vertical way, then you need to put it in a semicolon. And suppose I want to put it in a 2D array. So for example, I want to put this in a 2-dimensional array. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, so I want this 3 rows and 3 columns. And I say is equal to. So first of all, I want the rows. So 2 colon 3 colon 4 colon into, I'll multiply these 2 array and I'll get the result and show it in 2D. And I say here 3 comma 4 comma 5. Now if you look at this, what happens? This is in semicolon. That means this will be printed 2 3 4. And this is 3 4 5. So it will print it 3 4 5. And then the multiplication of each of them will be shown here. So 2 3s are 6, and so on and so forth. So say control shift and enter. Semicolon should not be there. So control shift and enter. Yeah. So just merge. 6 8 10. So what happens? 2 into 3 6, 2 into 4 8, 2 into 5 10. One row over. Then second row 3 into 3 9, 3 into 4 12, 3 into 5 15. 4 into 3 12, 4 into 4 16, and 4 into 5 20. So here in this demo we have seen vertical array how to print, horizontal array how to print, and 2D array how to print. Now you can go here in the vertical array and you can say, you can select these 3 and you can say also into, you can multiply 2 and you can say 3 colon 4 colon 5. Now what you'll get? You'll get 2 into 3 6, 4 into 3 12, and 5 into 2 4 20. So you'll get 6, 12, and 20. So control shift enter, 6, 12, and 20. So these kinds of things you can do with an array. Okay. So this is how you can create a vertical array. You can multiply 2 arrays and see the output, or you can have a single array. You can have a horizontal array and you can have a 2D array. So that's what this vertical range, horizontal range, and 2-dimensional range array formula is. Now in the previous module, we learned about array formula. Now I want to use that array formula practically, how it works and how to use it. Now if you look at this list here, it shows the annual salary and the increment rate. And I need to find out the incremental, what increment will this people, what would be the increment amount if 5% of increment is given for a person whose salary is around 8 lakhs, right? And 9,50,000 and 9 lakhs. So I want that. So normally what we do if you want to do something like that, if we write a formula like is equal to this into this. And then to use it, we say, we put a dollar here so that when you drag it, okay, this should not change. So I put a dollar in front of this. And when I drag this, this should change. But when I drag down, it should not change. So I put a dollar here, right? And then I drag this and I drag here. So this is how I actually do it, right? In a normal circumstances, what we have learned. But let's see how array works and how array makes this very simple. Okay, so we don't need to write that many formulas, or we don't need to put this dollar and all the stuffs and then drag it and all the stuffs. What we'll do is very simple. We'll just select this cell. We'll go here and say is equal to, I'll select this and multiply it by, and the idea is Control Shift Enter. We got the same result. Isn't that very simple? So you don't need to do and think about all this, references and absolute and relative and then drag it and all the stuffs. You just need to select these two, multiply them, and then say Control Shift Enter and select the appropriate cells where you want it. And automatically it would be done for you. So isn't that cool? So that's one of the major, advantages or the power of using an array. Let's look at another important point. Here is that suppose we have this list here where there is a list of fruit and prices. And if I want to find out the apple, for example, if I select the apple here, right? And I want to find out the maximum and the minimum price of apple. If I select banana, I want to get the maximum minimum price. So how do I get that? Using array formula. So how will we write this formula? Let's see. We'll say is equal to max. Then if select this is equal to this, whatever I select here, and make this as absolute reference. And then if it is true, then you need to do a max on that. Okay. And say Control Shift Enter. 15. For the banana, what is the maximum value? 15. If I change this to apple, 16. So for apple, 16 is the max. For oranges, 12 is the max. So for min, I can do the same thing. Okay. So I'll say, just to write it again and drag it also, min, and then say if, then a logical test is this is equal to whatever I select here. If it is true, then select the price from here, right? And then I put this as function f4 and then close it and then close it and say Control Shift Enter. 4. So oranges, what is the minimum price? 4. What is the maximum price? 12. For apples, 16.3, right? And for banana, 15.5. So this is where we can find the max and min price based on the fruit we check. So how is it actually happening? So let's take this formula here and just analyze this a bit and see how it works. Okay. So I'll just copy it here and just see how it works. So first of all, what will work? Now, what will execute first? So first of all, it will find out from J7 to J20 if it matches banana. Okay. So let's do that first. So I'll just copy this part. Okay. This part and say Control C and come here and say I'll select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So I'll do it here and say is equal to this one, comma, this one. And say Control Shift Enter. So see here, everything is false except this two. So wherever it finds banana, that only the value it is keeping because that is coming at true. Rest, it is coming at false. Now if I do a max on that, if I do a max on this, what I'll get? I'll get 15. And if I do a min on this, I'll get 5. So this is exactly what is happening. Okay. Now, if you're selecting this to be apples, see, apples will have values. I'll just make it. So this will have values, rest will be false. If I'm selecting oranges, then all will be false and this. And then you can see the min value is 4. If I'm changing this to apples, the min value is 3. And when I come here as bananas, the min value is 5. So this is how it works. And this is the power of using the array formulas. Another formula where array is used is transpose. Now, if I want to convert this from row to column, for example, I want to convert this into row and column. So I'll say is equal to, so I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll copy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll say is equal to transpose. And select these and say transpose it from row to column. So Control Shift Enter. See apples. I can also do for that for a 2-dimensional one. So what I can do here is I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I select 2. And then I say is equal to transpose, and I select the entire thing. And say Control Shift Enter. So apple 12, apple 3, apple 5, apple 13, apple 16, and this one. So it has been transposed from rows into columns. So these are the few applications where array formula becomes very handy and very helpful for us to work and use it. So you can apply this in your work area, and you can be as creative as you feel like, and you can apply it and learn more about it. In this module, we are going to learn about charts and how to work with charts. Now, charts are basically your visual representation of your data. Now, as we all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, if you look at a picture, you understand a lot of things rather than if I try to explain in words, and of course in figures. Now, these data are important, and by looking at it, you may get some information. And since this data is a small one, by just looking at it, you can get a lot of information. But suppose if this data would have been huge, around 500 rows or 600 rows, around 50, 30 columns, then just by looking data, you could not derive very valuable information on which you might take some important business decisions. So in order that we can take important decision and understand our data very fast so that we can take some important decisions, we require some visual way of representing my data. For that, Excel provides that with charts. And there are different types of charts with which we can work. So in this module, we are going to learn about column charts and how we can represent this monthly budget table in a chart. So let's get going. So if you look at this data, this talks about a monthly budget of around 3 months like Jan, Feb, and March, and the totals and percentage of rent in the total. What is the contribution of rent in the total of your budget? So it is actually 60% of my budget, which goes to rent. 7% goes to phone, and so on and so forth. Similarly, each of these months, what are the different items or bills I pay? And of course, you have more bills than them, but I just took few of them so that it's easy for you to understand. Now, how do I create a chart now? Do I require all the data? No, not really. You are not supposed to, or if you want, you can pick up all of them if you can really think about some chart about it. But right now, we are not doing that. Suppose we want to build a chart which will give me a visual representation of my bills for each month. And I want that to be represented in a column chart. Now, that's the best way of representing this information. Okay, so how do we go about doing that? So what I can do is I can select this data, right, which I want, on which I want the chart to be created, and then go to Insert, and then we have the charts here. As we could see, we have lots and lots of options for charts, right? And over here we have this option for column chart. So it's a 2D column, 3D column, and so on. So by just putting my cursor on or moving my mouse, you can see these charts are created. So I just pick up this one, which is a 2D one, simple one, and I click. and automatically this chart is created. So you can actually see that it is very, very simple in order to create a chart. As you can see, these are my data series, which represents the each bills. So this is my rent, this is the phone, this is the credit card, this is the food, and this is the candy. And that is the legends are giving here, which actually identifies them by color. And then which color is denoting what is shown here. Similarly, this is my x-axis where I have the date, which is this part. And this is my data series. We call this the data series, which represents each item. So if I select this, you can see automatically the system selects this, which says that this series is basically this one, which is your rent, and it goes till 1,000. So your y-axis show me the amount which I have spent, and my x-axis shows me the month. When did I spend this? So this is how a column chart is represented. And when I click on this series, I'll get this phone one. If I click on this series, I will get the credit. If I click on this, and so on and so forth. So, and all these series are selected. So if I click on the candy, and I can get this. So this way, this data and this chart is linked with each other. Okay. So if I change, suppose if I change this March, suppose I get the rent has increased for me for March. So if I say, okay, my rent got to $1,200. So if I click outside, you'll see automatically the data in the chart changes with automatically. So it's a link between the chart and the data. So you can see here, it goes, the March rent is showing 1,200, whereas the February and Jan rent is still 1,000. So there is a link between the data and the chart. So if I click on the chart outside, you'll see it selects the entire data, which I had actually selected to create the chart. Now, with the chart comes a lot of two tabs are added to the ribbon. One is the chart design and the format. Okay, so with these two, you can do formatting to your chart and change certain designs of the chart, which we are going to discuss. Now, the moment you select somewhere on the sheet, that option goes, because those two options are only with the chart. So those are only present, only comes up and adds to your ribbon whenever you select the chart. So again, it comes. Now, that's the default format of your chart. If you want, you can change the default format of the design by clicking up this or this. Now, this look good, this is what I prefer, and this look good. So you have multiple options where you can actually, put these things. So this is one thing which you can, select. So I selected that format, and it looks really nice. Okay, and here you have the chart title, and here we have all these things which you can do. So that's the place where you can actually format your chart. Okay, now suppose I want to change certain data in my chart. So I want to do some changes to my chart. So I don't want to show my Feb data. I just want to show my Jan and March, and maybe I want to compare with them, whatever. Then how we are going to select the data. Now, in order to select the data, what we need to do is we need to select the chart, go to the chart design and select data. So here is the option, select data. So the moment I do that, I would see that a dialog box comes up. Now this tells me which series I have selected. Now I want to change that data. So what I do is I select that, delete it, and then I reselect these two. And since I don't want to select Feb, I'll press Control and select March. So I'm not selecting Feb, right? So I just cancel it for a moment, and I just select outside. I'll select here, select data, and then I'll delete this, and then I'll select this, select Jan, press Control and select Feb, right? So you see Jan and March here, and Feb is not there, right? And then I say, okay. Oh, so I can see now there is a Jan here, there is a March here. Though Feb comes to the x-axis, but it doesn't have that series showing up because that has been left. But again, that should not have come. I think it's a bug here which is there. It comes up in few of these charts. Doesn't come always, but in few of the chart, it might come up. So what you can do is you can simply right click on this, on this axis. So this is your x-axis. You can select that axis, right click, go to format axis, and here it actually selects or automatically does it. So what we can do is we can convert that into a text axis. So the moment you convert that into a text axis, if you close it, you'll find that has gone. That Feb has gone, and you can see this Jan and March just next to each other and with the proper title out here. So this way you can actually create a column chart, and you could also change the data. Now, for example, I want to include the Feb as well now. So what should I do? I should select this, click on the select data, delete this, and then select it again. Okay, then Feb comes. Now suppose I don't want to include credit cards. So what should I do? I just don't want to include the credit cards. I just want to see rent, phone, food, and candy. And I don't want to have credit cards here. So what should I do? Simple. You select this, go ahead into the chart design, go to select data, delete this, select this, till phone, press Control, select food and candy, and leave credit out from the selection. You can see here rent is shown, phone is shown, food is shown, candy is shown, and no credit card. And say OK. And you can see here rent goes, phone goes, food, and you have only 4 series, which is rent, phone, food, and candy for 3 months. So now you can see how we could actually create a chart with different selection of our data. Now, if we want to format this chart, like for example, we have got this chart, this monthly budget chart, where you can see that we are having the rent, phone, food, and candy. And now let us include the credit card as well. So in that case, we go here, go to my, select the chart, go to my chart design as I showed you, select data, and I would select the credit card as well. So I'll select the entire thing once again, and I will say OK. So now if you see, credit card has also have been inserted into this chart. Now suppose I want to change this chart title. Now to change this chart title, of course, you can go and click here, and you can actually go and change the title to whatever title you want. But what also you can do also is that you can link this chart title with a column, with a cell, so that if I change that cell value, it also changes and it picks up that chart title from that cell address. So what I'm going to do is I'll just select this, remove whatever is there, and go to this cell and say equal to, and then click on this and say enter. So sorry, something problem. So I'll just keep it like that. Select this chart, select the chart, go here, say equal to, and select this monthly budget and say enter. See, the monthly budget comes here. So whatever I type here would now is linked with this chart title. So if I remove this ly from here and I say enter, so this becomes month budget. So this cell is being linked with this chart title. So in this way I can link the chart title with a cell, or I can just go and type whatever I feel like. So it all depends how you want it. Okay. Similarly, I can go to select the cell, I can select the chart, and then I can go to this chart design or format, and here, okay, I go to chart design, and from here I can add element to chart, right? So I have suppose this is these are my legends, right? These are my legends. So what can I do is I can go to this add chart element, then I will go to this legend, and I don't want the legend. So if I click on the none, the legend goes, and I don't have any legend. But you should have a legend, because then how would you know what that column means, right? So therefore we'll add this back. So we'll say add element, legend, where you want to add, to the right. So if I just move this, and you can see the effect on the chart. So it's on the top, or the legend goes to the left, or the legend at the bottom. So by default it is in the bottom, but I think right looks very nice. Oh sorry, the top looks very nice. So I'll select top. So it goes at the top there, and it's up there, right? So that looks nice. So this way you can actually go and change the legend's direction and where you want to put it on your chart. Similarly, if you want to change you want to give a font to this, you want to make it bold, so you can right click, go to the format axis, okay, or you can go directly here to the format font and do it whatever you feel like. We make it font style bold and say okay, and becomes a bit bold. Similarly, you can select this, right? And you can right click and so on and so forth. So this way you can go on changing the font, and there's so many other things which you can do, right? So you get a lot of options whereby you can just play around with your chart elements and see what all you can do and what all you will not be. You will be able to see that you would be able to do a lot of formatting with this chart. You can click on this, and if you want, you can go here to the format, chart design, add element, and you can go to the data labels, and you can show data labels here. See, center. So I won't select anything. So I'll select this chart. I'll go to the chart design. I'll go to the add chart element, go to the data labels, and here I can go to the center. So you can see that the data labels is shown on the chart on the center as outside end. So if you can see here, all the data elements values are shown here. So whatever chart values you have, it is shown at the top of all these data series. If you want, you can actually select the chart, go to your add chart element, and then if you want, you can remove that data labels and say none. You can make it a call out as well, and you have more data label options. You can just go and see what all you can do and what all you cannot do. You can just go and research on that and play around with it and find out what it can be done. Okay, another thing which you can do is that you can suppose this chart you do not want on this sheet, but you want in another sheet or as a separate sheet altogether. So in that case, I will select this chart and I will click on move chart. Now right now this chart is on this sheet, so you can move this chart to another sheet, right? Oh, but I don't have any other sheet other than this sheet. So what should I do? So I can actually put this in a new sheet. But this new sheet which I am going to put it into is a chart. So basically that sheet would not be like an Excel sheet with all this cells. It would just be there to display the chart. That's it. The only purpose of this sheet is to display the chart. And if you want, I can give the name to that particular sheet like monthly budget chart, and I'll say okay. So now see, this goes as a new chart here, and a new sheet comes. So there's a sheet 1 and which has no chart, and that chart has moved to here in this sheet. Over here, if you want, we can increase the font here, right? Go to the format axis, and we can go and change the font and all those stuffs. You get from here as well. Font, we can give around 12 here. Is it okay? So it becomes a bit bigger. Similarly, we can do it for here. Font, we can around 12. So okay, right? And here also, we can make it around 12. It's okay. And here also, we can go and make it around 20. So now it looks much better and bigger. So this way, you can actually format your data and cell. Now, if you want, again, go to your chart design, click on move chart, and move it back to sheet 1 if you want. So if I click on this and say okay, I'm back on sheet 1, right? So again, these fonts are very big, so it's not coming in. So I have to increase the size of the sheet and all the stuff. So this way I can play around with my data, with my chart, if I want to move it from one location to the other. So that's my chart below. So I can just go here and again click this and change this to format axis. Sorry, I can go here to the font part and make it 9 once again. So it is basically fits into my sheet. It's up to you how you are actually dealing with the whole thing. So you have to, play around with all this to understand it better. And then you can move this also to the font we want, right? So you click on the font and you want this to be 9 or 10 as also. So okay. And this way you can get something like that, which fits into your sheet. And this looks much better. And this way you can format it. Okay. So that's about formatting. How to. So there is a link. So this way you can all format your data, look at those data, how these data series could be formatted. What are these data series? These are all linked with the data. I've also linked the title with the data. Okay. Now, this chart looks pretty good for this monthly budget chart, and it is a column chart. Now suppose I want to display the same data in a pie chart. Then how would it look? So what I do is I first go and select and delete this, and then select my data, that is the bills, month, Feb and March, all the three with all the bills. I leave the total as it is, and then I go to insert and I click on this pie chart and click on this chart. So now you get a very different type of a chart, right? Now in this case, it represents or shows me only the rent. Now this kind of a chart cannot display all the data series, all the rows values. It will pick up all the column values as your series and then only display one of them, one of the rows for all the three columns. And it will show here the share of the pie, that which is having how much share. Now it might look equal, they are equally distributed, because for each month I'm actually giving the same amount of rent, except in March, which is basically 1200. But that is that amount is so less. If you may take the difference between the Feb and the March, or Jan and the March, is so less that you don't find that difference. Now to know it clearly, if I suppose say that fine, March rent is 2000, then we can understand that this actually represents the entire rent which I have paid, like 4000, out of which this one is the March, which is 50% of that 4000, and this is around 25%, and this is around 25%. So if you hover your mouse over this pie, the slices of what you see for this particular circle, then you might see this coming up, which tells me what this series is all about. It's a series which is of March 2019, and it is having a value of 22,000, which is 50%. But I bring it back to 1000, so it very much looks like this. Now suppose I want to see the reverse, that is, I want to see the rent, phone, credit cards, food and candy as a part of my pie, and my legends would be like rent, phone, credit cards, and this circle would be of for Jan, for example. Okay, for Jan. Then what should I do? Then I need to do nothing. I just need to select this chart, go to my chart design, and click on switch row column. So I want to switch this, which is now as rows, to column, and this to rows. So when I click on this, you see, I can see now that this is a Jan chart, and now it is showing me rent. This is my rent, this is my candy, this is my food, this is my credit card part, and this is my... So these slices are actually showing off the different percentage or values and their share in this pie. So that's how pie chart actually changes. Now for example, if I want to show the Feb one, then what should I do? Now to show the Feb one, what you need to do is that you need to go and select your data, click on select data and remove that, delete it, select this, press Ctrl and select Feb and say OK. And now you can see the same with the Feb. Okay, if you want to see the March, select data, delete this, select the bill and select March and say OK. And this is the March pie chart. So this is how pie chart works and displays data. So depending on the kind of requirement you have, you will pick up a chart. So if you want to show all the data series, you can use column chart. If you're only interested in showing one data series as as one pie, and then for that pie, what is the each row's contribution to that. Now if you want, you can also show data labels. You can format this. You can format this pie chart or change the type of chart if you want here. So if I can select this and I go to my right click on this and change or I can go and click here and click on change chart type, and from here I can move to the 2D, right? 2D or 3D or whatever, 3D type, and here I can say OK. So I'll get a lot of options for 3D, so I can select them and check which one suits me for my display. So here I can have the labels as well, So this will tell me different percentage of these contribution here. So rent is 57%, candy is 7%, food is 20%, credit cards, phone, right? I can also do it from here, add element, and from here I can go to the legend, I can make it to the right, and similarly data labels, I can have none, center it, inside, outside, end, best fit, call out, anything which is whatever I like, right? So this way I can do a lot of formatting on my pie chart and display the pie chart. Okay, so we have learned two things. One is the column chart in the previous video, and this one is the how to create a pie chart and how to label them.